What is happening, people? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're keeping well. We've beaten Manchester United 3-0 at Old Trafford, and today I'm joined by a wonderful panel. Two of them with me now. Firstly, Kyle, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How have you been, mate?
No, I've been very good, thank you. It's nice to get you back on. It's been a while, so thank you very much for giving us your time this evening. Should be a good one. Talking about something positive as well. So no, thank you very much for coming on. Dan, welcome back. Obviously on fairly recently. How you doing?
Yeah, all good. Thank you. Thank you for giving me my second cap tonight. And this time we get to talk about a win, which is much better than talking about a loss or anything else. So glad to be on. Perfect timing. Let's chat all things Spurs.
Lovely, thank you very much. Great to have you both on. Sadly, Billie T had to pull out for health reasons, so we do wish him all the best. And we have got a United fan, Alice, talks football on later. I always say, people who listen to this show will know whenever I get an opposition fan on Spurs, usually lose. Looks like we've broken that trend. Spurs have absolutely smashed United at Old Trafford, and we got the opposition fan on beforehand as well. So no, it's absolutely perfect. But thank you to everyone who's listening in today. If you are listening live on YouTube, don't forget to smash the subscribe button. It's free to do so, and it helps the channel and the podcast grow. Get involved in the comments and any questions as well, and we'll answer them at the end. But if you're listening after on a podcast platform, don't forget to drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Also, quick shout out to our sponsors and partners, the Kitman, where you can buy former player and memorabilia from the Kitman. You can use the coupon SCARFY15, that's a capital S, for a 15% discount. Also be running a giveaway ahead of the West Ham game as well. But let's crack straight into it. And Kyle, we'll come to you firstly. We go back before that game and focus on the lineup that was released. I was going to say an hour. It's different now, isn't it? It's like an hour and 15 before. We heard earlier in the day that Son was likely to miss the match. He did, and Timo Werner came, started, should I say, in his place. Any surprises in there for you? Is it kind of what you expected?
It's what I expected. It's not necessarily what I would have wanted. I think the Spurs fan in me would have wanted Mikey Moore to have started, but then obviously you know that's not really realistic at Old Trafford against Manchester United to make his first start. But to be fair to Timo, I thought other than the chances that he missed, his on the ball play and his link up play, particularly in the first half with Udogie, was really impressive. He had the Man United right back on strings a couple of times, and it was, the two big chances missed kind of changed people's perceptions of how well he played, I thought. But yeah, I'm not too surprised at Werner starting over Mikey Moore.
No, and I think you speak for a lot of the fan base there, just looking, through social media before the game, and as well as when that team was announced even early on in the game, they didn't necessarily want to see Timo Werner start. I think some of it maybe is held against him, but a lot of it is they want to see Mikey Moore get minutes and then see Werner as a barrier to get in there. But I don't think it really was realistic for Moore to start. I can definitely see people saying, he should be on par in front of Werner. I think you can make a case here like Carabao, with 20 minutes to go, you're winning 3-0. Why not bring Mikey Moore instead of Werner? I think you have a valid case for that. But I think it was only really Werner, rightly or wrongly, that was going to start this game. So no, thank you very much, Kyle. Dan, again, same question to you. What are your thoughts on the lineup? Any surprise in there? We should, can go with Benton Cole rather than Basuma. Anything at the time where you thought, I would have done that differently?
Not necessarily. I feel that with the options we had, it was probably the best 11 that we could start with. You can make a case with Basuma in the middle, but from what I've seen of him this season, I've not really liked. I know he's kind of been out of favour because of his own off the pitch infractions. So it's kind of what you saw is probably what you'd expect. I mean, a lot of people, as we've sort of discussed, want Mikey Moore in the team, but I do feel those minutes have got to be managed somewhat. I think it's very easy to get caught up in the trap of playing. I know the argument is that if you're good enough, you're old enough and all that kind of stuff, but I feel that he's such a precious talent that it'll be worth the wait. So from what we saw, as was alluded to just a moment ago with Werner, if you look at his whole performance, it's not bad. Unfortunately, what you'd expect him to do, or what you need a wide forward to do, is probably score one of those chances. It doesn't matter too much in the context of the game because we were so good compared to United being so bad. So in that isolation, it doesn't matter so much. But because Werner missed those chances, that is what's going to be taken away from his overall performance. So had he scored, it would have been a real confidence booster. And that's us being greedy, I suppose. But in terms of the lineup, you can't have too many complaints, can you?
No, you can't. But you do mention Werner there, and we'll come into the game next. And I actually think he's done all right. And I think his movement to get him in that positions is very good to create those chances. But ultimately, that's no good if you can't take the chances. But I completely agree with you. I think once he gets one, I'm not saying he's going to, turn into this goal machine, but I think, that will change a lot for him in front of goal. And having Son still at the club, hopefully, well, they can work together somehow and work on composure, etc. In front of goal, because Werner could be some player even off the bench for us if he does have that. But as I said, moving on to the game itself, another quick start in a game that Spurs are involved in. It was Brentford where we went behind early. This time we went ahead. 3rd minute, it was Brennan Johnson with the goal. But the story really is about Van der Ven. So Kyle, I mean, that's absolutely incredible, isn't it, from Van der Ven? I think that he's just a different gravy when I look at him. And not only does he do really well to pinch the ball off Rashford, for people who didn't see it, he goes all the way down the other end with his pace. Yes, United could have done better defensively, but they were afraid of him, and that tells you something. He took them all on and delivered, not only just hit and hope in the box, he's a perfect delivery to Brennan Johnson, who taps it into an open goal. What an assist from Van der Ven. That's incredible, isn't it?
Honestly, I've never seen a centre-back at Spurs in my lifetime who can move with the ball in that way. And to be honest, in world football, there aren't many centre-backs that can do what he did. You wouldn't expect any other centre-back in the league to do it. And it's abnormal that someone who is that tall and of that build can run that quickly. And a few of my friends, when I was watching the game, were going, he's not done anything special. He's just ran in a straight line. But it's, if it was that easy, why is everyone not doing it every week? Exactly. You know what I mean? But it was a brilliant assist and a great goal too. Good positioning from Brennan Johnson.
Yeah, really good position. You have to be in the right place at the right time. Absolutely. Dan, saying to you, Van der Ven, I mean, it's absolutely incredible, isn't it? And, Kyle mentions Brennan Johnson there. 4 in 4 now for Brennan Johnson. He's on fire, isn't he, as well? And Van der Ven, with that amazing, what I like to call it, turbocharge, it just felt like the perfect goal and the perfect start to the game, didn't it?
Precisely. I mean, in terms of Van der Ven, no defender, no centre-back has got any real right to be running the way he did. As you say, Carl, if it was that easy, defenders would be doing it every week. But to see that, it's just kind of mind-blowing. Even if that run was just a run, there was no goal, you'd kind of stand up and go, wow, we've got something special here. But for the run to then actually have an end product so early in the game, and for Brennan Johnson to then have a position to carry his run, it was just perfect, wasn't it? And I think from Brennan Johnson's point of view, he's had his detractors. People go beyond the line of Instagram abuse, and I think that's never on, because obviously you can feel negative about the player, but to go that kind of personal, I just think is people just should know better. So for him to sort of step away, it would be very easy to go into your shell and say, right, I've stepped away from social media. My performances are now going to take a knock, but it's gone the other way where he's gone, right, I'm going to draw a line under it myself, and now I'm going to start playing football. So to get 4 in 4, and yes, some of the opposition's been lesser, no disrespect to the likes of Coventry or Carabao, but you can only score what's in front of you. So to get 4 in 4, I'm not saying he's the first name on the team sheet, but it's very hard not to start him all of a sudden. So to get that confidence out of him, when people are saying, oh, it's a waste of 50 million, or why on earth have we bought him? Hopefully, we're sort of seeing the signs as to why. Now, it doesn't mean to say he's going to score every week. I think there's obviously got to be tempered expectations, but any player in a purple patch is always good. So for Johnson to kind of have his first purple patch at Tottenham can only be a positive.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Big up to Two Sides of the Pitch podcast in the YouTube chat. Just seen them there. Go subscribe to their YouTube channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. But Kyle, I did mention about United defensively, because you've got to get the balance. And I'll get a little bit later into the whole media side and the way they kind of covered that game afterwards in terms of focusing on Man United. But in this in particular goal, is it credit Spurs, Van der Ven, or do you look at it and go, United really, really poor defensively? Or do you see it as someone like myself, and I think quite a few people, and go, it's probably a bit of both. It's excellent from Spurs, but United a little bit poor defensively.
Yeah, I would say it's a mix of both, to be honest. I think as a professional footballer, you should know better of just take outside of the box, take him down, accept the yellow. That it stops them it stops the player from running into the box and putting in a cross like he did and scoring. You'd much rather take the yellow in that position. Obviously, once he's got into the box, you don't really dare getting a foot in because it's so easy to get it wrong. But I think credit where it's due to Van der Ven, because it was a brilliant assist, but it was really poor defending from Man United for him to just be able to run through the entire team like that. Someone's got to put a challenge in before he's got into the box. Yeah,
no, I completely agree with you. There's a balance between the two. Moving on to later in that first half, 42nd minute. This is a big talking point. The referee issued a straight red card to Bruno Fernandes after a late tackle on James Maddison. Dan, I'll start with you. Putting your kind of Spurs bias, as I like to call it, aside, how do you view this one? Is it a red card? Is it harsh? Is he slipping?
I think trying to be as objective as possible, he definitely slips, but then the way he makes contact after he slips is still quite reckless. Now, you can't just say, oh, because I've slipped, it can't be a red card. That has taken place. It's still a bad tackle. However, when you then see all the multiple angles, you're then kind of thinking, oh, it doesn't look like it from there, but it looks like it from there. So the fact that referees made the decision originally to call a red card kind of backs up that decision. It wasn't a case of VAR saying, I think you've got that wrong, especially now referees call sort of having a bit more weight. I think that kind of clinched the future or sort of the decision of Bruno Fernandes. So on balance, I think it was just about a red. I think you could argue, or maybe you would have seen instances where it's not a red. You could have that again refereed 10 times over and you get 6 or 7 different decisions. But from what we saw, I think with a little tint of Spurs bias, I must admit, it's a red card.
It's a red card for you. Okay. Thank you very much. Kyle, what do you think? Are you in agreement with Dan that it probably is a red card, or do you have a slightly different view on it?
I think it's harsh, but because it was accidental, but based off of previous events where they have been given, for example, Curtis Jones last year with us, he's not meant to go that high on Bissouma. His boot has kind of slipped over the ball and has then made contact with Bissouma, and that was given as a red. So I think based off of previous experiences, you've got to be consistent with it. But I do think it was harsh because there was a slip in there. But I think overall it probably was the right decision because it could have been dangerous. It was high. So yeah, I think it was a red card.
You think it was a red card? Okay, that's really interesting to see. But I think one thing I think we can hopefully all agree on is that red card or no red card, I think we still would have gone on to win that game anyway. And even if you want to debate that, up until that point, it was total domination. It's not a case of United lost this game because of the red card. They were awful before that. We should have been at least, for me, 2-3-0 up, if not more. I've been cautious there before that took place. But yeah, at half time, we did go into the break with a narrow 1-0 lead, Dan. It was an amazing first half, wasn't it? But only leading by 1. Do we need to, kill teams off better? Like Man United, no disrespect to them, but you come up against Man City, for example, in the Carabao Cup or in the league or whatever it may be, top teams that we want to progress in Europe. We have to take more of our chances, don't we?
I see what you mean, but I don't think we should be too critical of how we played yesterday. I feel that it's not necessarily always the amount of goals you score. Obviously, in an open game where both teams are scoring, you need to score more. But I think the most important thing yesterday was the timings of each goal. 3 minutes into the first half, really perfect time to score. Second half, again, second, third minute of the second half, once again, kind of anticipated any Manchester United pressure they could have had early on, killed that off. Just when it started growing into the game, that kind of 10, 15 minute spell, made a triple sub, scored again. So you can be critical and say, oh, that should have been 6 or 7. And I know there's that weird time we went to Old Trafford and won, 6-1 during COVID era. But really, how many times are you going to any other Big Six club and scoring even 3 away? So I feel that, it's a good performance. It's easy to be critical and say, oh, we should have scored more and Man United were terrible. But in the context of just getting a win at Old Trafford, I don't think we should be picking on the players too much in this instance.
Okay, no, I think that's really fair. Thank you very much, Dan. Just wanted to put the question out there. Kyle, should we have been leading by more than 1 going into that first half? And just how bad do you think Man United were in that first half?
I mean, they were bad. Like that was one of the worst United performances in the first half I've seen. But again, like Dan said, I think that the timing of the first goal was so important. We've became quite frequent to seeing us having to go 1-0 down for us to kick into gear and like actually get into the game. But this time to take such an early lead at Old Trafford away, I think it was great timing. Obviously, there's arguments to say that Brennan Johnson hitting the post in the first half, that was unlucky. But you know, the chances are coming. Like they're getting in the right positions. They're making good sequences of play. They're breaking down teams that might have a lower block. It is coming, so it's good signs of what is to come. So I'm not necessarily too concerned with it. A 3-0 win away to Man United, I think, can only really be taken as a positive here.
Yeah, definitely. Overall, I absolutely, completely agree with you. I was a bit worried at half time, but up until that red card, I was thinking around that kind of half an hour, 40-minute mark, you can see how this could potentially go, but the Fernandes thing changed that, and I think that worked in our favour. And anyway, I think we were, even if we can, 11 men, we would have continued like that in the second half. We would have got the goal eventually. So I think I agree with both of you. Other times in the season, even last season, I think it was an issue. In this case, I don't think so. We look more likely to score, and we added on the pressure. I mean, the amount of shots we had at the end of the whole game, I think, was really evident of that. But I want to move on to go for it. Yeah.
Just add to that point. I think, yes, there was a combination of two key factors, that being the sending off and the time of the second goal. I think you're absolutely right in the sense that we're all guilty, especially Spurs fans, of being nervous at 1-0 up because you always think, oh, Spursy, that kind of word, or it could quite easily collapse if we don't take our chances. And because we had so many chances in that first 35, 40 minutes, you thought, my word, how are we not more than 1-0 up? And then you think in the back of your mind, this could come back to haunt us. However, once Fernandes gets sent off, you start to ease a little bit more, but it's still that kind of, if there's only one goal in the game, United might find a late surge and get something like a point perhaps. But then by the time Kulu scores just after the second half, you think, right, surely now it's time to relax. And again, even though United had small waves of pressure, I think by that point, United's kind of real chance of getting into the game had then gone.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting to hear. So no, thank you very much. And I just want to bring up a quick comment in the YouTube chat. Has says probably the worst Man United I've seen, worse than Moyes. They had 10. Felt like we went them back in at 2-0. However, Johnson, best game for us. Kulu in the middle is cooking, and Bentancur solid. Stay tuned, Has. We're going to get on to a few of those individuals you just mentioned a little bit later. I mean, I dread to think, I suppose, when it come on to man of the match. Sometimes it's a case of there was times at the end of last season, there's times start this season where we struggle to pick a man of the match because no one stood out positively. I think it's the opposite. We're going to struggle because there's too many to choose from, but we'll worry, we cross that bridge when we get there. But the second goal for Spurs, again, scored early in the first half, to open the scoring. Scored early in the second half. This time, 47th minute, it was Kulusevski with the goal, which I thought was a really class finish, little hook over the keeper. It was a perfect start to the half, isn't it, Kyle? It's just what you want, just what Ange Postecoglou would have wanted.
Yes, exactly, and especially as well with Udogie coming off, he'd had a great first half, that linking up with Werner on that left side, Spence coming on. I thought, Spence in the second half performed really well. He kept a clean sheet and didn't really look a weakness. But no, I thought Kulusevski was brilliant yesterday. For me, I think he was the man of the match. Obviously, Van de Ven got it, but nine big chances created, or 9 chances created in a game. Could have maybe have got 2 assists if Werner put in those through balls away. But no, it was a great start. And yeah, 2-0 up.
Yep, 2-0 up. Just what we wanted. Absolutely. Dan, what did you make of the goal itself? I think it was really nicely taken by Kulusevski, but also the build-up.
Yeah, I mean, Johnson's run opens up the play with United being a man light. They're always going to be stretched anyway. But Kulu's touch and finish is just out this world, really, isn't it? He kind of does something much harder than sort of what you'd expect him to do. The way he kind of lofts it in and lofts it over Onana. That's just someone who's already confident at the start of the season. If you're not confident, you're not trying that move at all. So just what he's deserved from the start of the season, really. He's been kind of moved around a few positions. That says he's a player of utility, but sometimes you fall into that trap of being quite good at everything and not quite good at one position. But at the moment, it seems to drop a little bit deeper, and that's allowing Spurs to roam even further forward. So, yeah, as I say, a brilliant goal at Old Trafford yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. Would you, I mean, Dan mentions it there, Kyle. Would you say Kulusevski's been our player of the season so far? I think he's been really impressive in the middle. Obviously, people who don't know, he's been moved from the wing in the middle this year, and I think it's benefited him, would you say?
Absolutely, I'd say he's been our player of the season so far. I think his ball retention in the middle of the park that he offers to the rest of the side, I'd probably say is the best in the squad. It's that perfect balance of having an engine and like that work rate. He just never seems to tire. It's that perfect combination with that, as well as that creative side of it. That killer pass into space for other players around him. I think him and Maddison work so well together. Like they're a perfect balance with each other. But it's clear to see since being moved to the middle of the park from out wide that he's just came on leaps and bounds. I think he will be a massive player for us this season because he never really seems to get injured either. So hopefully he will remain fit for the rest of the season for quite a busy schedule this year, being in 3 competitions.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot to kind of deal with. But Dan, you did touch on Kulusevski there, which made me think of the question. Have you been really impressed with him? I think we all, thought he'd be better centrally, after glimpses, I suppose, last season, even the season that we've seen in that position. But has he gone that extra mile and surprised you even more?
I think so. I think he had that great half season when he first arrived, and everyone thought, oh, wow, this is quite the capture. And not quite hit those same levels over the past couple of seasons. Since we've been out of the Champions League picture, he's not quite been there. But again, that's due to a combination of injuries and lack of form. So I don't think you can be too critical of him. But it's refreshing to see him back and flourishing, really. I think because he can play in so many positions, you kind of forget where his best one is. So he's caught us all by surprise, and maybe even caught opposition teams by surprise as well, because they don't really know how to cope with him at the moment. So, as I say, you can play in a number of roles. That's a positive. But if he masters this one, and this is the one that really sort of shows what he can do, then it's only going to be a positive for Spurs. And more importantly, gives us another option in the middle of the park where a lot of people were moaning in the summer going, we haven't signed X, Y, Z. And rightly so, because you don't know who's going to do this. So it's kind of not luck, but it's helped that scenario in the short term anyway. So, yeah, as Spurs just says there, it might be as close to Dembele. Don't want to go too far too early, but he's got those kind of traits, and it can't be, it could be that he's that kind of missing link that we've missed in the middle of the park for a few years now.
Yeah, it could be, and I think he's done really well, and he's impressed everyone with his start to the season. I'd be interested to see if he keeps it going. I don't see why he wouldn't, unless it was injury. But as one of you mentioned there, 3 competitions, especially progressing them as well, could be very difficult. But actually, before we move on to the game, you mentioned in competitions there, since the last podcast, we got drawn in the 4th round. And for people who don't know, we've got Manchester City at home. I don't know about you guys and how you kind of saw it, but I was watching on TV. I stayed up a little bit extra for it because I had to get up early the next day. And I saw that we were at home. I was like, yes, get in there. And then Manchester City came out. I was like, oh my goodness. So, it couldn't be worse. That's why you don't get excited until you get drawn. So, Kyle, what do you make of that draw? Do you view it in terms of like some people are, it's over, let's focus on the league, let's focus on the Europa League? Or do you look at it and go, you have to beat the best, to be the best ultimately? If you want to win the competition, it's still the easiest trophy to win, would you say?
I wouldn't say it's the easiest because we do have to play Man City in the next round, but I would much prefer, I'm not opposed to us drawing them early on. Like you said, to be the best, you have to beat the best. And I think if we do beat City, who might not necessarily prioritise this cup, they could play a weaker side. You never know. Pep Guardiola's prone to his mind games and press conferences. He did say he would be rotating the squad for it a few weeks back before the draw. But, I think if we beat them as well, it's a huge confidence boost for the squads. We beat them and we could turn around and go, you know what? We have a really good chance of this now. We've probably knocked out on paper the favourites, maybe along with Arsenal as well. So I'd much prefer to get this out of the way. And if we do lose, it is a sense of we have drawn to Manchester City rather than our usual we've drawn a League 1-2 side and we've really let us down massively. Yeah,
I think it's a good way of looking at it, but it could, some fans look at it and go, oh, it's really frustrating. And I think it is that, Carabao Cup, before we were drawing Man City, should I say, would have been the easiest to win in terms of the least amount of games, the quickest route to the final, but it is going to be really hard against City. I think that, Rodri being out to the end of the season obviously isn't good from a football and a human point of view. And it isn't good for Spurs in terms of the title race for Arsenal, but in this game, I think that could have a little bit of a difference. But Dan, what are your reaction to that fourth round draw? I mean, finally at home, but drawing against Manchester City, it couldn't have been much tougher apart from playing them at the Etihad, could it?
No, not at all. But, it's cup football, so it all depends on how strong the lineups are. City might sort of feel that they've got so much Champions League matches to play. I know we're in Europe, but they've got 2 extra European matches to play that they might see the League Cup as more of an inconvenience. Not that they don't want to win it, but they'll go second string, which is not weak at all, but might make changes, and Spurs might look at it and go, we have to go as strong as possible. So that, coupled with our record against Man City at home, makes you feel that it's certainly up for grabs. So, if you beat Man City in this round, in theory, it then gets easier. So if you're going to win a trophy, you've got to meet in practice one team of real quality at some stage. So why not get it out of the way now? And then, it might be an easy road to the final. Of course, you've still got to navigate your way to the final. But you just got to give it a go, haven't you? As I say, cup football. So I'm confident in the sense that we can give them a game. Whether we can win, I don't know. But I don't sort of think that we should be throwing it by any nature. It's just sort of annoying that it's a home tie against City, but they're in the hat, we're in the hat, so we'll just have to wait and see.
No, I think that's a good way of looking at it. If I had to put you on the spot now, and had to put your neck on the line, do you think we'll win a trophy this season, Dan?
Yes, I'm going to go for the Europa League.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. You'd have that. Which do you think, we're kind of slipped down the table as we kind of, progress in Europe like we saw the likes of Villa doing last season, or do you think we can still keep a high place in the table and still compete for top 4 as well?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because you don't want to trade one off against the other. If you are slipping in the league, you can put even more focus into the Europa League. But there's always a temptation, if you're navigating around 4th or 5th, you can always think, well, actually, let's go for the Champions League as well. So then you might fall short in the Europa League. So it's hard to answer now because you don't know what's around the corner in, say, March, April, the real lie of the land then. Obviously, Spurs still need to be in the Europa League at that juncture. But if they are, say, 7th, 8th, and you can think to yourself, right, to get into the Champions League, the easiest route would be to win the Europa League rather than sacrificing everything in the league. So I'm still confident we can win the Europa League, but it all depends on where we are in the league come, say, Easter, and if we're in the Europa League, and what then takes the priority.
Okay, no, I think that's really nicely answered. So thank you very much for that, Dan. And Carl, same question to you. If you had to stick your neck on the line now, do you think we can win a trophy this season? I think it looks hard at this moment in time, but it's always going to be tough, I think. So what do you reckon? Is it possible? Can we do it?
I think we can. I think, like Dan said, the Europa League, but it would all depend on certain players staying fit, and in particular Van der Ven, because it's when you lose him and his recovery speed, like to be able to play the way that Postecoglou wants. Don't get me wrong, Dragusin is a great option, like as for squad depth, but you do lose that recovery pace for the high line, and he struggled with it in our last Europa League game and sending off. He got wrong-footed and had to bring the player down. So it very much depends on us not having another injury crisis like we did last year for us to remain competitive. But I think if they stay fit, I see no reason why we can't go on and win the Europa League.
Okay, I'm loving the positivity. We need more of this. Definitely loving it. But no, we will move on. We're waiting for Alice. That third Spurs goal. It was Solanke in the end with the goal. It was a tap-in the end. The goal came actually from a corner. We've gone from bad at defending them to scoring from one offensively. It came from Bergvall's corner, the substitute. And the other substitute, Papa Matisar, with a little flick on. I mean, Dan, that's a perfect goal, isn't it? It's a cherry on top. And also the perfect impact from the substitute. You couldn't have asked for more if you're Ange Postecoglou, could you?
Not at all. I mean, if you're making a triple substitution, you can't predict that anymore in terms of service and what's going to happen thereafter. So obviously you're making a triple sub just to take control of the game because, as I alluded to earlier, United had a wave of pressure and you thought, well, if they get one in with 10 men, then it's a test of the nerves. But to see that wave out, then make the subs, then get the goal, it's game management to a T, and I think you can't ask for anything more than that. Yes, you can sort of say, well, where's our fourth, where's our fifth? But for Solanke to also get on the score sheet, I know we were sort of waxing lyrical about Brennan Johnson, but for Solanke to keep his momentum going is a positive. I know some people are saying, well, he only scores tap-ins, but if it means him getting on the score sheet and having impact, I don't care where he scores from. And I think, as a striker, you should be in between the posts anyway, more often than not. So that's where you want him to be, scoring tap-ins. So I've got no issue with how he's scoring the goals at the moment, as long as he is.
Yeah, exactly. It honestly doesn't matter. And, the amount of shows I've been on, and people said, like, with Sono, he's not scoring the goals that he used to. Well, as long as they're going in and as long as he's getting assists, he's directly involved. It matters if he's not quite doing this that he used to. But no, I think you're absolutely right. And you mentioned his in-game management there, Ange Postecoglou, and that's something, he's been criticised for, I think, at times since he's become Spurs manager. But I think yesterday you can go that he's really good in-game management. It's not the first time as well. I personally think that it's been effective. Kyle, yeah, same to you. I mean, the third goal, I think that was probably my favourite goal out of all three. I think part of it's the fact it come from a corner. Lucas Bergevall involved. I mean, I find that quite exciting, along with a lot of other Spurs fans. And that was a perfect flick from Pape Matar Sarr, and obviously Solanke, right place, right time. Do you think, Sarr, that flick is deliberate? Is he going for goals? He's seen Solanke? Is it just a case of putting it in an area? I'm interested to get your thoughts.
I don't think he was going for goal, but I do think it was a case of that if he gets a flick onto it over the United defender behind him, that it's in a really dangerous area, and he should know the type of player that Solanke is will be occupying in and around that area. No, he is a poacher in front of goal. He's the striker that we've been missing, really, like Richarlison and Son. They can both do a job there, but I think Solanke, especially like with his back to play and like all the like nitty gritty work in and around the box, I think he offers something that at the squad we lost when Harry left. But yeah, like you said with the substitutions, it was 3 great substitutions for 2 of them to be involved with the third goal. You love to see it. We don't usually score from too many corners, so it was a nice ending to the game. But yeah, no, delighted that Solanke's finding form, and he set himself a 25 goal target. So hopefully he can come near to that.
Hopefully, that's certainly the aim. I'd like to welcome onto the podcast Alice. How are you doing?
Yesterday, not the best if in regards to United, but outside of United, good.
Well, that's the most important, I guess. But no, sorry to bring you on after a poor loss. I was just saying, before you came on earlier to the guys and the people watching, that whenever I bring an opposition fan on, I agree beforehand. Usually Spurs go on and lose, so you've actually broken that trend. You can look at that as a positive or negative way. But no, thank you very much for coming on after such a poor result. So I'll come to you first, actually, Alice, because I want to go back to a little bit that we've discussed because we've got an ex-referee in the chat about the Bruno Fernandes red card. He says, on Fernandes, as a ref, you're taught to look for many things for serious foul play that include speed, force, and endangerment to an opponent. Initially, it looked like a Studs first challenge, but it goes on to say, replay shows it's not Studs. He's clipped with his heels with low force and low intensity. Very surprised if they don't win an appeal, Man United. It was similar to Jack Stevenson's versus United. And the last bit it goes on to say is, but he lunged in with speed and intensity and made the contact much higher up. And he's also a Spurs fan, which I find interesting. But Alice, I'll ask you about those, Bruno Fernandes straight red card. It surprised me when the card came out of the pocket so quickly. Looking back on it again now and your thoughts at the time, do you think it's a red card?
No, I don't think it's a red card. I don't think it changed the game much. I think even Tottenham were well on top of us by then. I think even if Bruno wasn't sent off, I think Tottenham go on and win the game. So I don't think we can sit and complain too much about it as United. We were getting battered before the red card. But no, in my opinion, it wasn't a red card. James Maddison even said it wasn't a red card. So I think that tells you everything you need to know. And I think it was a bit soft. And I think this is the guy that sent Declan Rice off the other week. And I think referees are giving red cards out for just soft things. I can't stand Arsenal. I want Arsenal to lose. And I get why Declan Rice got a second yellow. But you're thinking, send Declan Rice off for this. Send Bruno Fernandes off for this in these games at half-time. And I'm just not a big fan of these red cards being given out left, right and centre unless it's, generally dangerous. So, yeah, I don't think it's a red card. But ultimately, it doesn't really bother me. I think we'll win the appeal. I think we'll get Bruno back. If we don't win the appeal, I'll be a bit like, But I think, it didn't really change the game. I think you were well and truly on top of us before that.
Okay, no, that's interesting. Thank you very much for your honesty as well. But yeah, no, it certainly did surprise me. Dan, I'll come back to you because the game did end United 0, Spurs 3. Do you think that's a statement win and a statement performance from Spurs? There's questions going into the game, and there has been, I think following the end to last season, start of this season, around like Ange Postecoglou and his project, whether it's right for the Premier League, I suppose. A little bit of outside talk, as I like to call it. And I think it's a big game for both managers going into it. So do you think that's a real statement as well? Also, our top-6 record under Ange Postecoglou before coming into this, I think the last time we won against the top-6 side was like Villa away all the way back like 10th of March. So is that a statement win for you?
I don't think it is, actually, because United were so bad and they've had such an indifferent start to the season. It's not like you've gone to Man City and won 2-1 at the Etihad. I think it was a poor Manchester United. I think the narrative is going to be driven by Man United being so poor, and that shouldn't detract from Tottenham playing so well. But at the same time, I don't think you can look at that and think, yes, Spurs are back, this is business. I think fundamentally that's the United side being very, very poor and Tottenham just being in the right place at the right time to take advantage.
Okay. No, I think you make a good point there. That's really interesting. Kyle, what do you reckon? Is that a statement, or are you with Dan in terms of it's a great win, but also you've got to bear in mind the element that United, they just weren't good. They didn't turn up.
I agree with Dan, but you can only play what's in front of you. They were a poor side on that day, and we did play well, but it's not like we went to Anfield and beat them 3-0, which would have been a huge statement and would have given us a lot of confidence. But no, I don't think it's a statement win. It's obviously great because we've only beaten them once, and that was last year at home in the last couple of years. So it's always nice to beat Man United, but no, I don't think it's too much of a statement win, really.
Okay, that's interesting to hear. Alice, what's next, for Manchester United? Do you think Ten Hag is the right man? Obviously, these discussions do come up a lot after results like this, but he has had 5 transfer windows now, and I think it's his team yesterday. Only really a fully fit team apart from Luke Shaw, so he hasn't really got much to turn to regarding yesterday, has he?
Yeah, no, I wanted Ten Hag to be given a 3rd season because of this cycle we've had at Manchester United where we sack managers. It doesn't get better. We sack managers and the awful recruitment and stuff in the past. But obviously, Ineos came in this summer. I think the recruitment was quite good. And we're at a point where these are mostly Ten Hag's players, and all these Man United players that are crap for us, they'll go on international duty and put 9, 10 out of 10 performances. So we know they're not bad players. And then they come to United and they're crap. And I think ultimately, I've said I'm not Ten Hag out because I said at the beginning of the season he's got to October international break. I think it's only fair he gets to October international break. But when I see what I see versus Spurs, I can't make an excuse to them. I can't say anything. Like if they sacked him off that Spurs performance, Ineos have every right to, because he's going to have to change something up and he's going to have to make something different. And I think as a United fan, we're a little bit worried because you can look at Enzo Maresca coming into Chelsea. He's adapting his system to suit, Palmer in his best role and suit Madueke in his best role and Levi Colwill. We've got Bruno Fernandes that goes to Portugal, and I think he's got like 30 goal contributions in his last 21 games for Portugal, and it's not even penalties, and he's unbelievable for Portugal. And he was really good for us, to be fair, last season. But this season, he's looked lost. Kobbie Mainoo's been completely misprofiled. There'll be games where we're crying out for Christian Eriksen because we need control and we're dominating possessions, but he doesn't use Eriksen. But in games where we don't dominate possession, you don't want Eriksen on there because he's not good out of possession. And I think as a United fan, it's getting frustrating because we'll be playing a game and we're in control, and then he'll take Ahmad and Xerxes off, who are people that can help you control the game, and then go for counter-attack, and then we're crap for the last 10 minutes of games this season. So I thought we were okay when we lost to Brighton, and I thought we did enough to beat Crystal Palace this season. I don't think it's been all bad, but I think that Tottenham performance was the worst performance bar Crystal Palace 4-0 under Ten Hag, and I can't make one excuse for him.
No, I don't think. I think you put that really nicely. What would you say United's biggest problem is at the moment? And you mentioned the midfield there, and I look at defence personnel wise. I think that's quite strong, and I think Onana's had a good start to the season. That attack should be enough. I think a lot of it, personally, Alice, I had my thoughts on it, and feel free to disagree with me. A lot more than I do about United. But a lot of it is at the moment, Ten Hag doesn't know his best 11. You see sometimes Xerxes start up top, as you said, Ahmed. For me, it's constantly changing. Whereas I know we're obviously early into the season, but I feel he hasn't quite found that consistent lineup. I think we've seen similar problems to the likes of West Ham, where it's not that nailed on starting 11 yet. But I think the midfield's a big problem for you. I don't think there's enough balance in there, and I think mainly he hasn't started the season very well. Eriksen, he does something really good, like we saw in Europe, really, really good, but then gets caught on the ball there. I don't think you have that right balance in midfield. There's gaps everywhere, and there was last season. In particular when you had Casemiro there. So what's your biggest problem right now? Is it Ten Hag? Is it the players? Is it the board?
I completely agree about the midfield. Like, it is the midfield, and a lot of that will come down to Ten Hag, because Agate has a lot of limitations, but he's a specialist ball winner, duel winner, and then he's playing Agate and asking him to do this, that, and build up, and then asking him to, operate here. And it's like, well, we've signed Agate because he's a specialist in this, and this, but we're asking him to do a role that he's not a specialist in. And then Kobbie Mainoo is a specialist in terms of what he can do on the ball, in terms of retention, breaking a line's composure. But then we're wanting him to do this, and this off the ball, because Eriksen and Casemiro can't do that off the ball. And then Bruno Fernandes, we're going to isolate him really high up the pitch. So it's Bruno, Xerxes, Garnacho, Rashford, huge gap. Mainoo and whoever's playing next to Mainoo, who was Agate, but it's been Eriksen, it's with Casemiro. They've got mission impossible. And while I think Casemiro has been atrocious lately, I also think this is mission impossible. You could put Rodri in there, and I think he would make Rodri look shite. I'm at that point where I think that it's not good. The midfield is the issue, because I think, Eriksen is good on the ball, but he doesn't have the legs. You look at like Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai, their running numbers to Eriksen and Casemiro. Yeah, we can't compete athletically, of course. But the setup, the spaces, Mickey van der Ven shouldn't be allowed to run through us like that, But FC20 did it on the week. What Mickey van der Ven did to us, FC20 did, FC20 did on our left-hand side. And I said in my match preview before the game, I said, Brennan Johnson could have a very good game. I think he might score. I said Brennan Johnson, I think, will score, and I think Maddison and Kulu will cause us problems. From watching Tottenham, watching Man United, I said, we don't mark players at the back post. We don't mark runners from the wings. We give a lot of space down our left flank, because he asked Rashford to stay high. The low now inverts because, he's right-footed. And then Brennan Johnson gets there, finds space, not marked, scores a goal. I said also, Kulu and Maddison, they're quite advanced eights. That it's going to be Agate and Mainoo having to deal with them, because the rest will be isolated from them. So they're going to have loads of space to create. I think Kulusevski created, 9 chances? And I think it was frustrating, because everything I could see from watching Man United and Tottenham this season that could be a problem was a problem. And Tottenham exploited that. And I was thinking, surely Ten Hag has watched Tottenham and knows, well, that's going to cause us a problem. That's going to cause us a problem. And it did.
Yeah, I think it was quite worrying as well at half time that not much changed. I mean, personnel wise, yes, but the same way of playing, that strikes me as strange. You sometimes have a really bad half. You were really bad. I think every plays past was poor. Everything went out of play. And I think United fans are really, really patient with the team. In the first half, I think the atmosphere was really good before the game as well. I think they're really hyped and up for what was a big game for Ten Hag United. But yeah, it was worrying. You came out the second half and I think it looked worse than you did in the first half, and I did think it could get worse. But I'll go back to Spurs for a minute. Kyle, would you say that we've turned a corner? And if you say we've turned a corner in our season, where do you think it's been? Is it Coventry bringing the big guns on, getting that win? Because it's 4-4 now, 4 wins in 4. It wasn't the best start to the season. Or do you look at it and go, first few games of the season, the performances are there, but the results weren't? But now we're still performing well, but also getting the results. So I want to see how you view that.
I thought the performances were good as a whole. Obviously, it was frustrating to draw to Leicester and drop points there, but we were on top for the majority of the game. It's just that one lapse in concentration that we still do seem to have in us every now and then. But, we're conceding less XG on average this year compared to last year. We're one of the highest in the league for XG created. this system's going to take time, and Postecoglou has said it in press conferences before that it's not always going to be smooth sailing. There's going to be rough periods. There's going to be great periods and stuff. But I think this season as a whole, we've been playing better, but the performances perhaps don't reflect that. And Coventry, in particular, for specific players, might have been a turning point. For example, Brennan Johnson. It was the first game after deactivating his social media accounts when he received all that abuse after the North London derby. Scored a goal, and that seems to have turned a corner for him since then. He's went on to score in every game since, and looks a completely different player. Full of confidence. But I think overall, as a whole, we've been playing better football, but the results don't fully reflect that.
Okay, that's really interesting to hear. Dan, do you agree with Kyle? And also, the way Kyle speaks is similar to what Ange Postecoglou actually has been saying in terms of the performances are there, but the results haven't. And also the results, they matter the most. We haven't been getting them. Do you think now that our results are starting to reflect the way we've actually started the season?
It's a tough one, really, because the last 4 wins haven't been against what you consider quality opposition. No disrespect to Manchester United, but they were terrible yesterday. So you can't really sort of say we're well beaters. There is an element of flat track bullies about it. So great that we've won 4 in a row, but you need to start turning it on against the likes of Arsenal and the derby. Where is that performance? So you're kind of sort of thinking there's certainly progress there. Steps have been made in the right direction. But I still think it's a little bit early to be sort of thinking this is our Spurs. Spurs are back. Yes, Andy's right in saying that the stats look in the right sort of direction and positives. But as you say, Harry, it's results business. So you can sort of play all this lovely football and get all the numbers, but if you're not getting the necessary points, it means far little. So it's a great period in terms of results and outcomes, and we're riding this crest of the wave. But we've got to move up the table. It could be all in vain if we don't win at Brighton in the weekend, and then we've sort of halt our Premier League progress. So we've had a good run. I just feel that we now need to start stitching things together, because when you look at the way the top 4 are playing at the moment and the way that we played largely this season, I still think there's a bit of a gap between us and the pack at the top at the moment. I think we've got to bridge that gap as well this season. So things looking good, but I don't think we're there just yet.
No, I think we've got to be patient, we've got to be calm and not get carried away. Absolutely. But I think that's why that game at the weekend was so important to both United and Spurs. That gap to the top 4 is already, luckily for both teams, in particular Spurs, the closest to Villa. Villa didn't win at the weekend, but slowly that gap is starting to get bigger and bigger. You don't want it to get very quickly, it will calm. You go from 6 points to 12 to 15, and that gap, you've got to kind of keep it close. But, Kyle, I think you mentioned XG earlier. We hit 5.33 XG at Old Trafford. I mean, I think that's very high. Very rarely in a game you see something like that. So I think it was really impressive. But I do want to move on to who was man of the match. So Alice, I'll come to you. I'm assuming it's not going to be a United player. If it is, then go for it. But who is your man of the match in that game? Who impressed you the most?
I'd probably say Dejan Kulusevski. I think he was all over us, created 9 chances, I think 3 big chances, probably could have walked away with 2 assists had Werner been a bit more clinical. I think he was everywhere. I think obviously we lost the midfield battle, and I think a big reason behind Man United losing midfield battle in general this season is because of, I feel like every other midfield we play can run more than us. They've got more running power, they've got more energy, they press better. I think Tottenham's pressing numbers were, I don't know what they were, but they were pretty high against us. I think the running, we got completely outrun in those areas, and I think Tottenham created 9 big chances. Tottenham had next year like 5 against us, which is like a record for the last 10 years. I think Tottenham now, because of that game, it's allowed them to stat pad to having almost the highest XG in the Premier League this season, and a lot of that came through Dejan. I think he was fantastic. I think he's probably been your best player in general this season, and I think he obviously got the goal like 2 minutes into the second half, and worst time to concede, because I was thinking half-time talk. Maybe, if we can get to like 65th minute and it's still 1-0 to Tottenham, maybe their confidence will get there in the United player and maybe we can find a way. But I think, when you can see 2 minutes in the second half, that's game over. And yeah, I thought he was fantastic. Obviously, Van der Ven was really good. Don't think we had a sniff going forward. Solanke, does link up good, pressing good, got his goal. But I think it would have to be Decky.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So thank you very much for that, Alice. Dan, Man of the match for Spurs. Do you have anyone different? Alice mentions Kulusevski there, mentions Solanke's hold-up play. Obviously got a goal to show for it. What do you reckon? I think it's quite a few you can choose between here.
Yeah, there's certainly a few contenders, isn't there? I mean, sometimes you can just pick a goal scorer and say, that's it. But with 3 goal scorers, it kind of opens up a bit more. So I feel that on the balance of what we saw yesterday, Van der Ven had a very good game. I'll just give it to Kulu, though. I think his all-round play was just edged it. Obviously, Van der Ven had a great game in defence, but I think Kulu just offered a bit more in the final 2/3 of the pitch. So that with his goal as well, I feel that, yeah, he was deserved man of the match in my eyes.
Deserved man of the match, yeah. I think Kulusevski is a name that will keep appearing. There is a couple of names that haven't been mentioned that we'll bring up later, and one actually is Bentancur. I thought we've done really well. So, Kyle, is Bentancur in your consideration for man of the match, or are you going to give it to Kulusevski or someone else?
I mean, Bentancur did have a really good game, but I would probably give it to Kulusevski. You know, he's the engine in that midfield now. He just doesn't seem to tire. He just doesn't seem to stop running. Like I said earlier, he offers that balance of work rate as well as that creative side to him, which I think is very different to a lot of the midfielders we currently have at the squad. So I would have to agree with both Dan and Alice. Yeah, Kulusevski man of the match for me.
Okay, no, that's really interesting to hear. Thank you very much. Alice, I'll come to you next. Having looked at Spurs yesterday, I think it's hard to maybe answer this question based on yesterday, but what you've seen so far, is there any weak links you think we have in that team? Any player or certain position that we need to improve on? Like some would say Timo Werner yesterday. How do you view how he done?
Yeah, I think one with Tottenham, I think there's good players there. I think it's just like consistency in general. Like I think the Bentancur, Maddison, Decky midfield trio is working well. And I think a big question around Tottenham is what's their best midfield three been? Because last year it was Sarr, Maddison, Basuma were really good, and then Basuma dropped off a bit. Sarr then didn't look the same after AFCON, and I think they've sort of figured out what midfield three is working for them. I think Ange has done that. I think he's sort of figuring out what works well. I think your back four is solid. I think, depth is a question because Udogie does seem to pick up a few injuries. But I think, the biggest question mark is your wings. I think if Tottenham was to sign someone in January, they'd probably want a winger. I don't think Werner was awful in terms of his pressing, his work rate, what he brings to the system. I think he made it difficult for Mazraoui and Man United, and Mazraoui's been really good for us so far this season. But he, 2 1-on-1s, he's got to score at least one of them, particularly because I felt that Anana's positioning for one of them wasn't even like it was. So I would probably say Werner was the weak point. I think I look at Tottenham and I think just give Mikey Moore a go. We had Anthony playing so much last season and we had Amad Diallo on the bench and we gave Amad Diallo a chance and he's so much better than Anthony. And I think Mikey Moore was maybe unlucky not to get a few more minutes, obviously because Son's out, but I look at Tottenham and I think if you need to sign someone, it would probably definitely be a winger.
Definitely be a winger. Okay, that's interesting to hear. So thank you, Alice. I mean, I mentioned Bentancur earlier. Kyle, would you say that he's back to his best? And Bentancur at his best and what he's capable of? Do you think he's, would you kind of see the level that he can reach? Because he's had a Spurs career with lots of different managers, often disrupted by injury, different things. It might be disrupted again this season for a potential ban. But at this moment in time, he looks really strong, doesn't he? Really consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his ability to kind of come deep, collect the ball with his back towards the opposition. He's been really good, reminiscent of his form before his big injury, his ACL injury, and it's taken him a few weeks to get into it. But obviously, he's had a few injuries during his time with us, and like you said, different managers playing different systems and whatnot. But I would say he's back to his form when he first joined us under Conte, and I think he is probably our best six at the club at the moment who can play the way that Postecoglou wants his six to play.
That's really interesting to hear. And Dan, I'm going to ask you about a different player, Dominic Solanke, on fire. Do you think he's made a big difference since he's come in? And how many goals do you think he can score this season? We talked earlier about him setting targets. Can he get 20, 25 goals? Can you see him actually getting that? And also on the difference that he's made so far?
I think in terms of his target, it's good that he's sort of saying those kind of numbers. If he said, 15, 20, you kind of rest on your laurels a little bit, aren't you? So for him to sort of be saying I want to score 25. A lot of it will depend on service. If the likes of Son, Kulu, Johnson will stay fit, then that will help his case. Has he improved Tottenham? I think it's a little too early to tell, really. I think what he's offered has been positive. I don't know if it's sort of taken Tottenham to the higher level, because we're kind of not floundering in the Premier League table at the moment, but it's been a little bit of an indifferent start. We've kind of, as I said earlier, hitting this positive form. So it's probably a little bit too early to say the transformation with Solanke and team has been perfect and, all things are firing on all cylinders. But from what I've seen, I've liked. I think it's just a bit too early at this stage of the campaign to make those kind of declarations.
Okay, no, that's really interesting to hear. Alice, I want to ask you about Dominic Solanke, actually. Do you think as a player that Man United potentially could have looked at and, 65 million, do you think that Spurs have made the right decision to sign him? And do you think he'll make a difference to Spurs this season, having that striker, that poacher, if you like, in the hold-up play, etc., that he does bring?
Yeah, he's a good player, and I think Man United do need a proven goal scorer, but I think the problem with Man United is we do not create anything for our forwards, our strikers. Rasmus Højlund has been in the graveyard shift. He got 16 goals last year, Rasmus Højlund, in the graveyard shift. I only think 5 of his goals were assisted, which tells you what you need to know about the graveyard shift that we were last year. And I felt that, I think if Solanke comes to us, he's probably starved of service a little bit. And I think a lot of Man United fans said this. They named João Pedro, Cunha, and Xerxes as the 3 forwards United should look at, because they're not forwards that are going to score 20 goals. They're more like Firmino, but they're forwards that are going to help, hopefully, our wingers score more goals and just drop deeper and get more involved in play, because that was an issue at United. So I'm quite happy with the addition of Xerxes, because I think if we can get it clicking, he will just improve. I think, we've seen it. We look better when he's on the pitch, to be honest. Didn't have the best game versus Tottenham, but other than that, we've looked better with him on the pitch. But I think Solanke's been a really good addition to Tottenham. I think initially, when I was thinking strikers that Tottenham should get, I think Benjamin Sesko stands out. I think Ivan Toney stands out. But I think when you look at what Ange demands of his striker, the pressing that he wants, you can't really get much better than Dominic Solanke in pressing, but he's also someone that can be a box threat. I think when he scored versus Carabao, he's making the runners as Son shoots, showing he's got that sort of instinct to score. And I thought even without the goal, we would have had a really good performance against United. I think he provides a focal point. He holds up well. He links play well. He's never going to be Harry Kane level or as good as Harry Kane, but he's a little bit younger than the likes of Watkins and the likes of Tony. And, he scored 20 goals in the Premier League last season. So there's definitely a good player there. I think he's someone that's shown he needs a couple of chances to warm up, but I think, is it 3 and 3? It will be confidence for him. And I think his all-round play was helping the Tottenham team. I think they look better for it. And I think watching Tottenham last year, I did see them put a lot of balls in the box. Brennan Johnson sort of low cutbacks and Son a couple of times. So I think that's something that it will work, and I think he suits the system.
Yeah, okay, that's good to hear. Thank you very much. I want to move on to this little interesting question, which may cause a little bit of a debate. And the question here is, he's going to put it 2 ways. Firstly, I'm going to do how many Manchester United players actually get into this Spurs team, and it is the starting 11. And whatever you deem Spurs' best starting 11, that's completely up to you. So Dan, I'll come to you first. So at this moment in time, how many Man United players and who get into that Spurs starting 11?
In terms of the lineups we saw yesterday,
it completely up to you. I just generally players that Man United have got, and it could count like Luke Shaw, who's injured. That can count anyone that you think will get into the team.
Okay. If I took yesterday's lineup, so we'll just swap Marcus Rashford for Timo Werner.
Okay.
Apart from that, though, you're kind of looking at it and sort of thinking who's really sort of better in the sense of, would that add value to the Tottenham team? They're not too far apart in terms of actual skill levels. So if you're looking at someone like Romero versus Martinez, there's not much. So why would you swap them in the same sort of place? I don't think anyone really sort of stands out from a United point of view and says, right, they need to be in the Tottenham team. Garnacho for Johnson maybe, but then Johnson's also scored 4 and 4. So I wouldn't make too many changes. I know it's probably with some inherent Spurs bias there as well, but from what I saw yesterday as well, I'm not really in a rush to make too many switches. So as I say, if I took yesterday's teams, Rashford for Werner would be definitely, but apart from that, I don't think I'd be touching it too much.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. I mean, it was a dominant display from us yesterday. Carl, is there anyone that strikes you that go, oh, I want to bring them to Spurs? And it can be, I suppose, for the bench, but the real thing here is the lineup. Can it be improved by any United players?
It's difficult because Man United are currently struggling, so a lot of the players maybe aren't performing at their best. But if we're going off of players where we know the level that they're capable of playing, I do think you'd be silly not to bring Bruno Fernandes in at his best. He is a world-class player. I would probably say he is better than Maddison at his best. Going off of yesterday, I thought Garnacho didn't have an amazing game, but I think a lot of people do seem to forget that he is still so young, and it's not really his fault that he's been given such an important role of like featuring so much for United at a young age. It's almost like a curse of having that much responsibility at his age. But there's definitely a player in there. It's just the team as a whole aren't performing to a great level. But I'd say Fernandes at his best and possibly Garnacho for Werner.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, if we're totally going off yesterday's lineup, I think, Garnacho would have taken. I don't know about Rashford in terms of I don't think he would suit Ange Postecoglou. I think Ange would want him to track back and would want him to get out of the way, etc. for inverted fullbacks. I can't see that working, but Garnacho without a doubt, absolutely. Yeah, Alex, same question for you. How many of United players, be interesting to hear coming from you, get into that Spurs team at their absolute best, when it's up and firing and at your best?
Yeah, so, I mean, if it was like based off yesterday, it would probably be Rashford for Werner or Garnacho for Werner. I mean, you couldn't make a case for anybody else. But as Carl said, Bruno Fernandes at his very best is a different level. We've seen it before. Luke Shaw at his very best is good, but to be honest, he's just a hospital bed at the moment. He's still injured till November. So, Diego Dalot would be someone that would be good for Ange because he can invert and he could give depth to both Porro and Udogie playing on either side. But he had the worst game I've ever seen him have for Man United yesterday, and he's been one of our best players for the last year. Martinez and Romero were amazing in Copa America together. They had a great partnership, clean sheets, only conceded one goal. But Mickey van der Ven's too good to even, debate that at the moment. Martinez hasn't had the best start of the season. So you could argue Martinez and Dalot, but I don't think they would kick Porro and Van der Ven out the starting 11. You could argue them for depth. I think Bruno Fernandes and I guess Maino for control in midfield as well at his best. He's good on the ball. Ange would like that. But yeah, it's a difficult one because of the form and stuff. I do think Garnacho is a very Ange Postecoglou player. I think profile-wise, he's only 19. He works incredibly hard. He runs and runs and runs. His output, he's got 7 goal contributions in 3 starts this season, so it's not bad output either. Obviously, he did get 3 of them versus Barnsley. But I think Garnacho and Dalot, in terms of profiles, would definitely, and Mazraoui, to be fair, would suit Ange. I'd say, but it's difficult at the moment because we're just so crap.
Fair enough. No, I appreciate your honesty. If I had to say United players that I would take right now, I'd probably go. The first one would probably go with Mazraoui, and I do really like Pedro Porro, but I think Mazraoui is really good defensively as well. And I think on the right, competition for Porro, that would be really good. Maybe up until yesterday, I would have gone Kobbie Mainoo, big fan, but I think Bruno Fernandes is the one that strikes me in terms of at his best. Definitely, what he's capable of. But Alice, before we move on, my last kind of question to you is: if you could only choose one Spurs player, to sign for United under Ten Hag right now, you came in now or in January, who would it be if you just had to choose one? Obviously, based on the team you've got, maybe a position you're struggling with, maybe that midfield.
Yeah, the thing is, the biggest issue for us is more of a defensive-minded midfielder. So based off yesterday, Bentancur, but obviously I think he's a great player, but he's had issues with injuries and inconsistency and stuff. I think profile-wise, it would be a Bentancur or an Archie Gray, but Archie Gray's potential, and I think we obviously need someone now. That's I think the profile and potential-wise what we need the most. But I mean, to be honest, looking at Tottenham, Mickey van der Ven's the one that catches your eye. It's just how rapid he is, and considering that Man United need players to do a lot of running, their defenders to stretch and sprint in behind. I think we've signed De Ligt and Euro and Martinez, and I think they're all good centre backs. So I don't think we're desperate for a centre back, but Van der Ven's one that I would love, and I think profile-wise is a midfielder, though. I think Bentancur, based off yesterday's performance, would have been who we like the most. And I do really rate Kulusevski, but we've got Mount, we've got Bruno, we've got Ahmad that can play centrally. As good as he is, I think if we're looking at what we need, it probably Bentancur or Gray, but Bentancur's probably a bit better now.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you very much. Before we move on to both Man United and Spurs' next game, I want to talk about both teams and where they will finish for the season. So I don't want why, I just want position. So I'm going to come round in no particular order. So firstly, we start with where Spurs are going to finish. So you just say the position. Kyle, I'm going to start with you. Where do you think Spurs are going to finish?
5th.
5th, okay. Dan?
6th.
6th. Alice, what do you reckon for Spurs?
5th.
5th, okay. That's interesting. And Manchester United, Alice, I'll start with you this time.
I think I predicted us 5th, but right now I'm 8th.
8th, okay. Dan?
Yeah, I'll say 8th.
8th. Kyle?
7th.
7th, okay. So, all pretty much outside of Europe, unless anything dramatic happens and United can sneak into the Conference League. That's really interesting. I think the expectation was just a little bit big coming into the season for Man United. Ineos, the whole Sir Jim Ratcliffe thing. I think the recruitment was good. To be honest with you, I think of course it can always be better, but I think it was quite good. De Ligt, Mazraoui, I think these are good players. Xerxes to support Højlund competition, all those things. I think going into the transfer window, United fans were like, we need this. You ticked the majority of those boxes, if not all. But we move on to both teams' next game, and we start with Spurs' next game, where we play. I'm not going to try and say the full name. Let's go with Budapest preview in the Europa League on Thursday. Kyle, what would your lineup look like? Feel free to talk us through it. How strong would it be based on the fact like Coventry, that team wasn't enough to get through? Do we have to go full strength, or do we need to make rotation?
No, I think we should definitely make rotations. The quality of our squads. Yes, it might not be up to the standard of maybe like the top 4 of the other clubs, like other top clubs. But compared to that Budapest, like with respect, like we should be able to do the job whilst making rotations. I'd quite like to see Spence start. I think he's done enough against Coventry and then also in the second half against United to warrant a start. I would also like to see Mikey Moore start purely for the fact of that we should have enough personnel to get through it where. Even
though that with Coventry that it wasn't good enough against a Championship team, do you think it should be enough for this game?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think although Coventry are a lower league side, I do think like the English game, it was at their place. It was physical. It was always going to be a difficult game early rounds in the cup. We're notorious for not being too great away from home in the cup. I would just love to see more play. The Spurs fan inside of me would just love to see one of our own start and potentially have a good game.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to see Lucas Bergwijn in there. Spence, you mentioned, absolutely. So I think a few changes. I don't think, to be honest with you, we should be making any more than 8-9 changes. But at the same time, a couple of changes, a little bit of rotation opportunity to give these players. But I'm always someone that'd rather go strong, blow the team away if we can, and then make those changes rather than somehow not get through. But if this game should be easier than Coventry. I do agree with you on that. Dan, what do you reckon? Budapest, how are you feeling ahead of that one? And also your lineup, would it be strong? You listen to the conversation go on between me and Kyle. Where do you stand with it? Going strong, second team. Who do you rotate? How much by? A lot of questions.
Yeah, I'd go quite strong because if you remember, Jed Spence can't play in Europe, so
of course, yeah.
Oh God,
he's
yeah.
not in the squad.
I forgot as well.
If
What a silly decision.
Doggy is fit, and then also you've got Dragusin being suspended, but Romero's back, so you're not going to be able to rest too many players in centre back position. In terms of up top, what option have you got in the middle if Son isn't fit? So you probably have to go Solanke. There's probably scope to change it in the middle of the park. Players like Bergvall, Gray, for example, maybe Basuma. So that's probably where changes are likely to be made. But as you say, Harry, I'm more of the ilk of get the game won or as close to one first, then make those changes. I think you've got to start strong, and then if you've got options off the bench, use those. I mean, obviously you've got Brighton on Sunday, so we're caught in the Thursday-Sunday cycle now, which no one ever really wants to be in, but such is being in the Europa League. So I feel also from getting points on the board and getting in the automatic phase of knockout phase as soon as possible, it's probably easier to try and win match strong now, and then you've got the luxury of the last couple of Europa League games to then rest players properly. So then you like to be your Mikey Moores can come in and actually get 90 minutes rather than just kind of a fleeting appearance, which you still might get, but I don't think you can push for him to start on Thursday this early.
Okay, that's interesting to hear. Yeah, I can see where you're both coming from, and I suppose somewhere in the middle. I do think that, we need to see that youth be given the chance that we've seen so many times. Alice can relate, mainly with Man United, Garnacho, etc. Wherever you look around the league, Diallo as well, we mentioned earlier, completely forgot about him, in terms of young players who give them a chance. It turns out they actually might be ready, and there's no doubt Berger have more talent. Maybe they're more ready than we think. You don't know Lancashire until we give them the opportunity, but I'm also absolutely with Dan in terms of we've just got to get the job done, go strong, make the changes once the game's done. So I think there's got to be a balance between the two. But I was surprised by the amount of changes made against Carabao. Obviously, it worked out in the end, but I don't think we can make many more than that. I'm going to kick off the score predictions. I'm feeling confident at this moment in time. I'm going to go with 4-1 Spurs. I can't see us keep a clean sheet. Again, we've kept a couple of clean sheets recently. I can't see another one. Carl, what do you think the score will be? Easy Spurs win for you?
Yeah, I think it should be relatively comfortable. I'm going for a 3-1 win. Like you said, I can't see us keeping another clean sheet. But yeah, 3-1, get the job done.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think we'll go 4-0 up and we'll concede at the end, and I don't know, maybe give them a couple of chances at the end. We won't make it easy, I know that. We might be easy in the game, but we'll give something to maybe even let the buck in. But Dan, what do you reckon the score's going to be? You're going to go for a Spurs win as well?
Yeah, I'll take a Spurs win. I'll make it a bit more routine. I reckon just 2-0. I think on the road, you'd quite happily take that, wouldn't you? So it doesn't have to be fantastic.
I think Dan's having some audio issues, so we'll come back to Dan. Alice, I want to ask you actually, for his first point of view, from a United point of view, should I say, on Spurs, how far can we go in the Europa League this year? Is it a case of get through the group stage, see where we are in January? Can Spurs win it if they go all out for it?
Yeah, I think Spurs can win it. I know there's this curse when it comes to Tottenham and trophies, but I think you actually are favourites to win the competition. There's no Champions League teams dropping down on it. So when you look at all the teams in there, as crap as Man United have been this season, both Spurs and Man United should be looking at saying this is a comp that we should win. We're probably the two favourites to win. But in knockout football, anything can happen. And I think Man United are capable of it, and Tottenham are definitely capable of it, where it's a knockout game, easy win, and you don't do the job. Yeah,
I think it's so easily done. We'll move on to your game, Alice. Next, Manchester United, who play Porto away. So I think that's could be quite a tough game. So Alice, we'll start with you first. How do you feel ahead of that one? Anything in particular you want to see different with the lineup? I mean, I'm sure you'll be keen to make a few changes from that Spurs game.
Yeah, no, I don't even know what to think. Like, even before the Spurs loss, I said this is going to be our most difficult game. We've got Porto away, then Fenerbahce away, so they're two difficult games in the Europa League. And FD20, because if we didn't win that, there's even more pressure to now beat Porto. And I'm not confident because I think they've won 6 of the last 7. Porto, they look quite good this season. I think did they play Arsenal in the Champions League last year? And
yeah, they did.
Yeah, it's one of those where I don't even know what I want to see at the moment. We drop one player for another player, it's still bad. We drop this player, that player. It's gone beyond the lineup. Like I think I would like to see Mount play a bit deeper. I actually thought Mount, for the half an hour he was on the pitch before he came off, he ran versus Tottenham, which is the bare minimum. But he did that. I'd probably. Mount, Bruno's not going to play in the Premier League, but I think we'll probably get that appealed. I'd probably go Bruno, Mount, and probably like Maino midfield 3, which is quite attacking. I'd want to see Ahmad on the right. I'd see Højlund in the middle, get him his first start of the season. Rest Xerxes, Rashford on the lefts. Yeah, and then back four be the same back four versus Tottenham. But it's just so difficult to pick at the moment because whoever we play, it could be good, it could be bad.
It could be, and that's interesting to hear. Also, Alice, your score prediction for the game. So it's hard to think when you've lost badly. It's hard to look ahead to your next game. But can you find a way to win?
Yeah, I mean, we've shown it before. We lost 4-0 to Crystal Palace, and I'd lost all hope at that point. And then we went and won the next 4 in a row, beating City in the FA Cup final. So anything can happen at United. We do respond sometimes to bad losses. 4-0 Brentford. We beat Liverpool the following week, but we just seem to be getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Like that Tottenham game was awful. I'm going to say 1-1. I don't think we win it, but I'm going to say they've got to give something.
Okay, that's really interesting to hear. Thank you very much. I think you could definitely get a draw, but you just never know with United, and we can certainly relate to that with Spurs fans. But I think that wraps us up nicely for today's show. So thank you to everyone who listened, everyone who got involved throughout the comments. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It's free to do so. It does help the channel grow and helps improve the content of the podcast. If you're listening after on the podcast platform, don't forget to watch all the way through. Drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Check out our sponsors as at the start. Then use the coupon Scarfy15 for a 15% discount. And thank you very much also to my guests this evening. Kyle, thank you very much for coming on once again. So it has been a while, but it's always great to have you back on. Where can people find you across social media?
Sorry, can you repeat that last bit?
That's all right. Where can people find you on socials?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I've I left my Twitter handle on here at Carl Freegard. I'm a training journalist at the Uni of Lincoln. So yeah, anyone following me would be great. Yeah,
absolutely. Go drop Kyle a follow. Dan, thank you very much for coming on. Twice in quick concession for you. This time a lot better game to be talking about. Where can people find you across social media? Oh, Dan, I think you still got audio issues, but I'll do it for you. You can follow Dan there, Dan Tracy, 1983 on X. Dan's doing really well. Got a nice little platform there, so no worries, Dan. I've had my plenty share of audio issues, so go drop Dan a follow. Alice, thank you very much for giving us your time this evening. I know how busy you are. Where can people find you across social media for those Spurs fans? It'd be interesting to hear from a United fan to get your point of view. If you do talk sense after all, I'm not saying United fans don't, but where can people find you?
So I do Man United content over on Alice Talks Football, and then I do content about the other big Premier League clubs over on my second channel called Aquila Football. If you don't know how to spell that, it's basically Alice spelled backwards football. I do waffle on Twitter as well, which is Alice Talks Footy. Thank you, Harry, for having me on.
Don't we all? No, thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to everyone who listened. I will quickly say behind Ange more than ever. I think that United win. I think that yes, I don't think United were very good, but I do feel that was a statement performance, a statement win. We really proved a point. Brighton will be interesting, though. I think they've started the season really well. But for now, a massive come on, you Spurs.
You were working as a manager at Celtic Park when we met you. We picked you out, you shook us up and turned us around. You've turned us into something new. Ange, Postecoglou, you know that we believe it when you say you're gonna change it. Ange, Postecoglou, we're the mighty Tottenham and nobody's gonna stop them. Oh, we look so fine in blue and lily white. And then he said to me, I'm from a land down under. Postecoglou, baby. Postecoglou, oh. Postecoglou, baby. Postecoglou, oh. Postecoglou, baby. Postecoglou, oh, Postecoglou, baby. Carlo